Don't throw away other important values in your life just going for one. I went for some things in my life and found out later I had paid too much. If I had known how much they were going to cost, I never would have paid. So that is a consideration. The next approach to time management is to work longer and harder. And we all know the dangers there, right? Unless you aren't working at all, then you probably need to work longer and harder. But for some people, if 10 hours won't do it in a day, they work 12. And if 12 won't do, they move it up to 14. Some people even take on 2 jobs. And there are some very real dangers here, not least of which is health problems that result from not being able to handle the stress. So you've got to be careful with this approach. The last approach, I think, is the best, and that is to get more out of you. In the time you have assigned to labor, make the hours more valuable. The key is not to work harder, but to work smarter. If you're putting in about 8 or 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, that's about it. You can't work much harder. But remember, it's not the hours you put in that counts. It's what you put in the hours. Get more from you to make the investment of time more valuable, and no telling how valuable you can become. We don't lack the capacity. We only lack the ideas and the will and the discipline to carry them out. In considering the subject of time management, remember that a big part of the key for changing is to take it in small steps. Most of us don't make revolutionary changes. We change a few degrees at a time. When you get some life momentum rolling, it's not that easy to make all the changes all at once. Hey, you can't whip a U-turn with the Queen Elizabeth II. When that big ship gets moving, they say it takes 7 miles just to get it stopped. So when it's really moving, you just have to nudge it a little, and finally you get it turned. That's a lot like our lives. A few nudges at a time. But if you're consistent, you can't believe the progress you can make in a fairly short period of time. Here is my first key point on the management of time. Either you run the day, or it runs you. That's fairly simply put, but it is so true. Everything in life is a lot like that. Emotions are a good example. Either you master them, or they will master you. Something is always going to master, and something is always going to serve, whether it's your emotions, your enterprise, or your project. Difficulty will serve or master. Fear, anxiety, inclinations, they all serve or master. We must learn to send our inclinations to school, to teach them how to behave, how best to serve, and to learn their true value. So that is key 1. Get in charge. You be the master.
Great entrepreneurs are able to delegate. The successful women CEOs are remarkably good at this. Remarkably good at it. And the way it works is, I'll give you an example of the way Sarah works. She hires somebody, she sets a goal for 90 days, and gets out of their way. Gets completely out of their way. Lets them achieve it. If they achieve it, she moves them up the organization. If they don't, they get 3 tries until they're out. If you can't achieve your goals in business, that's what happens. But her whole thing is, let them do the work themselves. Let them figure it out. I don't want to use my time for it. That's what I hired them for.
Stop prioritizing easy. Stop prioritizing easy. A lot of people, when they look at their to-do list of the day, they just start working towards the easy things, knocking off the easy things. They think that's going to get me some momentum. It'll get me into the day. I'll feel like I'm succeeding. And the reality is it's making them less likely to actually do the things that count. And how do you know this? How do you know if you're guilty of that? You know it if your day feels like there's a lot of busy work, but there's an absence of your life's work. You know what I mean? If you don't feel like your activities during the day are really creating to your vitality, to the contributions you want to make with the world, to doing activities and tasks that you really enjoy, whose fault is that? Is it the man's? Is it the government's? No, it's like you're setting up your day. You can choose what to do with it. Maybe you need to look at doing things that would support you, your health, your vibrancy, your joy, your real growth and contribution in a more significant way. If you feel like there's always busy work, but it's not your life's work, you probably prioritize things at a larger level, maybe incorrectly for you. Now, I don't know this. I can't gauge it. I mean, I'm just talking you through here now as I look and as you listen to me. All I can do is encourage you to just look and say, how have I been prioritizing? Have I had a structure? Have I had a framework? Have I had ideas about what's important to me in the world? And I always run my decision-making through those? Because if you haven't set that up, this is the time to do that for yourself. First step, stop prioritizing easy. Just because there's something that's easy to do does not mean it must be done today. What I would rather you to do is say, I am going to prioritize things today that will make significant steps forward in my life. These are, I just say, if the opposite of stop, or sort of prioritizing easy, is to prioritize progress. Things that actually move the needle of your life forward. Things that actually contribute in ways that you find meaningful and significant and fulfilling. And you know you deserve that, but sometimes you get caught up, right? Maybe you've just been caught up in everybody else's, hot mess, and your life thus became a hot mess. It's not because you are, it's that you were just doing the easy things to please people. Because, that's easy. Oh, I'm gonna please some people today. But what we need you to do is say, what would significantly move me toward my dreams today? What 3 things must happen today that would be real movement forward? Not like little checklists. Our whole world has gotten so addicted to little tiny checklists, but they're not doing anything meaningful. They're not checking off, I'm living my life, So I want you to get back into what would really progress me today. Stop prioritizing easy, start prioritizing progress, things that matter.
Every morning, I prepare myself for the day. So I listen to some form of either spiritual song, or I read some kind of spiritual passage. I read something called The Bowl of Sake, which is written by a Sufi master, or I'll read a daily word. And then I meditate. And I do a gratitude journal. And whether I'm doing it electronically or whether I'm, writing in my little journal that I don't carry the journal around if I'm going to be on long extended vacations, because once I left the journal in a hotel, and God only knows what you could sell that for. So I don't do that. But I keep some form of spiritual practice where I remind myself daily of where I've come from.
My life changed a couple years ago when I discovered something called the progress principle. It is a principle that was written about in the Harvard Business Review. It's based on a tremendous amount of research done by a professor over there. And what she determined is that people that feel happy and successful and fulfilled by their lives and work, they all have one thing in common. They feel as though they're making progress on something that matters. So I read this little bit of research and I started applying it to my life. And what I do, as stupid as this sounds, it really works. I don't focus on balancing everything. I focus on just making sure that I make progress on one thing a day. That's right, you heard me. One thing a day that matters to me. Now, if I can make progress on one thing a day that matters to me, then I can let go and let the rest of my day get hijacked by kids, by spouse, by phone calls, by emails, by social media, by all kinds of things that come up and tend to hijack your day when you're a busy person, when you have a family, when you're married, when you got a lot going on. And so by focusing on one thing a day, I feel the sense of control and the sense of progress that science tells us will make you happy and make you feel more confident and actually make you more effective at getting things done. It also frees me up to be more present with my kids.
So many people do. We live in a very weakened society. So when they hear a throwback guy like me from back in the ancient days of Garanimals, they often think this guy is just whatever. So if you think that I'm some unhappy guy, you're wrong. Having lived the life I've lived and seeing the other side, not being afraid to attack what was in front of me, has made me happy.
Say that again. And in fact, let me make sure I understood it. Getting to the point where you're not afraid to face the thing on the other side of the door that wants to attack you has made you happy.
Right.
It's really powerful. I hope people heard that.
Right. That made me very happy. So basically, I just don't walk around with a daggone smile on my face all the damn time. So, Merry Christmas. But basically, what the dark side is we all have a cookie jar, and we all have a jar of
That's its official name.
It's a jar of man, where it just ain't going right. And in Hell Week, what they do in Hell Week, because this is where I really went to the dark side. What they do in Hell Week is they design Hell Week to find your flaws. And they do a really good job of that. It's 130 hours of continuous training. You may get 2 hours of sleep. And they beat the shit out of you and find everything wrong with your mentality. And then they start Hell Week. And that's the beauty of it. And for me, I'm not some naturally God-given guy. I don't have a great bit of talent in anything. So what got me through horrible times was the dark side. My name is David Goggins. I created Goggins. Goggins is the guy that can take anything you put in front of him. You want to break my legs? So be it. I have a way of going to a place like I did in that race where all the pain and suffering that they put on top of me in Hell Week, I will reverse that pain and suffering and I will take your soul. So every instructor that put me through BUD/S, my job, what drove me was I wanted you to go home that night after you beat the living shit out of me and I smiled in your face. I wanted you to feel worse than I did and you were going home to a nice warm bed with your wife or your kids and a nice meal, and I was still out there in the grip, suffering for another 100 hours. I wanted you to think about me knowing that I'm comfortable being very uncomfortable. And I want you to think about when you went through Hell Week, how uncomfortable you were and how bad you wanted to quit, knowing I'm not thinking that way. So the dark side is something that I've designed. It's an evil place I can go that very few things can hurt me. I use the hurt you're trying to put on me, I flip it upside down and use it. You trying to use it for kryptonite? No, it's power pillars for me. I'm using it for strength. I just flip negative into positive, that's all it is.
Productivity is very simple, it's a measurement to me. I actually am productive 64 hours a day. And the reason that I'm productive 64 hours a day, I call it the power of 64, is that I focus in on having twice as many productive hours. So if most people work 8 productive hours, I work 16. I then focus in on the efficiencies of those hours to turn the 16 hours to twice as efficient to 32 hours of production. And then I look at the statistical success of what I'm doing to double that to create 64 hours of production. So when people ask me, how do you speak internationally, have your own radio show on CNBC, run a business, have a family of 4 kids, happy marriage, travel, do all of these things? Well, it's easy because I have 64 hours a day that I'm doing things. And it may sound silly, but I've actually changed my life by creating and playing with time. Let me give you some examples of what to do. I take everything that I do by the minute, hour, day, month, year, and I look at it and I create systems. It may sound a little OCD or anal retentive, but it actually works. So I took, for example, I brush my teeth, floss my teeth, and take Listerine every morning. And I took that and I started realizing that I would daze off and forget what tooth, and it took me an average of 6 minutes a day. But if I stayed focused in the morning and that small little thing that I do every day, I could save 4 minutes. 4 minutes times 7 days was 28 minutes a week, times 4 weeks in a month was 2 hours a month, times 12 months was 24 hours that I regained of productivity. All because I stay focused when I brush my teeth, floss my teeth, and take a shot of Listerine. Other things happen. I realize that time is compressed in the morning. So I'm not sure if you can, looking at me, realize it. I've spent hours of wasted time in the closet wondering what to wear. I sit there in the morning, no matter how late I am, like, or I've lost a sock, or I can't find the right belt. And so I learned this little trick that I had when I was 5 years old, is I lay out my clothes at night. But the challenge is, when I analyzed that, is I didn't want to take away from the time with my children at night. So I incorporated that within laying out my clothes. So I took my girls and I let them lay out my clothes. So they learned colors and sizes, geography, where things were bought, finance. I did all kinds of type of things. And now my 6-year-old son, because I travel a lot, he actually gets excited when I leave because he gets to lay out my clothes. And my oldest daughter, who's 17, walks by and tells me, "Oh, Daddy, I miss laying out your clothes with you." See how this universal energy has created itself into efficient, effective, statistically successful things in my life that have nothing to do with business. It's a matter of putting energy in creating the habits in performance.